Hey guys, so welcome back to the Prescription to Travel MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Courtney Downes, and today I want to talk about something that I feel doesn't really get talked about enough in the points and mile space, and that's the real cost of free travel. Because, yes, last year I stayed 23 nights in hotels where I paid $0 out of pocket. And many of the other nights that we stayed in really nice places were, heavily discounted for what I got in return. And I think that sounds amazing. It sounds like a dream, but if I'm being completely honest with you and with myself, that's only part of the story. So, first, I think it's important that we start talking about a little bit about why I got started in points and miles. So, I didn't get into points and miles because I couldn't afford to travel, just for perspective. I got into it because I was already traveling and I wanted to be able to do more of it. And honestly, I saw the possibility of being able to travel at a quality that really just exceeded what I had already come to expect, and I think that's what really kind of took me down the rabbit hole. So, I think budget travel is really cool, and I think it still allows you to explore different places, and, I've done my share of $10 a night rooms and, travel on Greyhound, but those days, honestly, are over for me. And, we'll still stay at, like, a Hyatt place when we're heading to Disney or, the night before we're going to the airport, but my Travelodge days are over. No offense to anyone who loves a Travelodge or finds, the accommodations to not be a deal breaker or, consider this just a place to rest their head. But I think back to this experience where I went to San Antonio and, I booked this room at the Travelodge and got there and found, blood on the sheets and the carpet, and the room was old and the AC was noisy, and, I called my dad because I just couldn't. And I remember the hotel not being accommodating at all, so I'm not even sure where I ended up staying or what happened after that, but yeah, not going back now. I know, shots fired at the Travelodge, and I know that it's not gonna be everyone's experience there, but there are some things that I'm just not willing to retry, and I'll just as soon stay home. So no, seriously, I appreciate the options that are available to me now, and I wish that points and miles had been on my radar at that time. And, all things considered, I know myself, and for me, it's about more comfort. It's about comfortable long haul flights and better hotels and better service and more experiences. It's about really enjoying my time off, because it's limited, and enjoying the different spaces that I'm in during that time. It's not just about taking more trips, but it's about taking higher quality ones. And I think that looks different for different people, right? For some, it's about the journey, others, it's about the destination. Same thing. For some, it's Four Seasons or bust, and for some, it's $50 Spirit flights all the way. And I think I'm somewhere in the middle. And I think I needed to find a way to do that comfortably without sacrificing my financial goals. So, save my cash for my other financial priorities, figure out how to make this all work together. And so, let's talk about cash. So, for example, the last trip I booked before getting into points and miles was an all inclusive in Mexico. It cost us about $4,000. I think we booked through Costco for my family of four. And I paid that in cash because, that was money I was already willing to spend. I don't think that's unreasonable, but I realize obviously everyone's financial picture is different, but that's again just to give you some perspective. Maybe you spend more or less on a week vacation, but points allow me to do this more often or, to get a little more creative when it comes to planning my trips. So now I can book extra excursions with that or, you know, where I may have previously passed on, booking that sailboat tour or, doing something like that. I can have that extra funding to be able to do those types of things and without exceeding my travel budget. So points didn't create my travel habits, but they have certainly optimized them. And I stand by points and miles being a game changer, whether you're traveling on a budget or desire more luxurious opportunities. So let's talk about what social media's take is on this. So the social media illusion, and I think sometimes, especially on social media, we unintentionally create this illusion that everything is free. Everything is easy, traveling on points, everything is minimal cost, and that's just not true. I think we don't always emphasize the hidden costs. So, let's talk about what doesn't get as much attention. The cost of time. It's something that kind of seems a little intangible, but you can't get time back. Time is money. I honestly believe time is the most precious commodity that we have. And a lot of time goes into points and miles and learning the game and, searching for flights. I can't tell you how many hours I probably spent searching for flight deals, which is probably more than the average person. Going to the store for gift card runs, all this takes time. And for me, it's enjoyable. It's a hobby. And I think there's great value in doing something that you enjoy. And, the time that I spend during my travels is time that I wouldn't trade. So just being able to plan these amazing trips, but it's still something to consider, right? So number 2, the change in cancellation fees. So these are things that you don't consider, but you book flights on points, plans change, suddenly it's $100 per ticket that you have to apply to these change fees. And multiply that by a family of 4 or 5, and those costs add up pretty quickly. Number 3, food and experiences. So, yes, your flight might be free, but your hotel might not be, or even your hotel might be free, but once you get there, you're still paying for dining and activities and experiences. And for me, dining is a part of the experience. So I'm not the pack ramen and eat in my hotel room kind of girl. And I understand it. Um, but it's not how I want to travel. I kept that same mentality when we went to the Maldives. I quickly understood why my colleagues were recommending that we bring Ziploc bags with us. You know, there are certain things that I look forward to, and that part of that is the food. So, yeah, this certainly adds up, and there are certainly ways to offset these costs as well. And everything you do doesn't have to be super expensive, right? So there are ways to do free things in new places. A walk on the beach costs you absolutely nothing. Watching the sunset or spending time with your family, $0. But most extra things that will be a part of your trip are going to come at some cost, and you do have to factor that in. Number 4, transportation. So Uber, Lyft, rental cars. Yes, I use credits, I stack rewards, I earn points on those rides, but I'm still spending money. So even when it's optimized, there's still a cost associated with that. And I think you can't talk about costs and not mention the big one, annual fees. So let's talk about the number that surprised even me last year. So I spent close to $6,000 in credit card annual fees. That's not small, right? And I'm not saying everyone should do that, but here's the key. I extracted more value than I paid for these actual credit cards. So what does value actually look like? Let me give you a real world example of me extracting value from one of my credit cards. So the Hilton Aspire card, it has a $550 fee. It's one of my keeper cards for now, and it currently has an elevated offer that gives you an extra free night certificate on top of the one that you would normally get annually with this card. And all the Hilton Amex cards currently have this offer. So it's only through April 16th. So run, don't walk, get that offer. But yes, using my Hilton Aspire card, I paid $550 for the year. I got $200 back in flight credits, which I banked on Southwest. It gave me a $209 clear credit, which was super helpful during one of my last escapades. I can't remember where I was going, but I was on a trip. I think this has actually happened a couple of times, but I was glad that I had the clear in place because I forgot to put TSA PreCheck information on my boarding pass. And this sometimes happens when you're booking a flight with one airline and it gets transferred over to a partner airline, and the number doesn't actually transfer over. And so then I got in line thinking I had TSA PreCheck on my boarding pass and got there and realized that I didn't. So Clear actually came in clutch because I didn't need to have Clear on my boarding pass. I just needed to have a Clear account and go stand in their line. So very helpful. The $400 resort credits that the Aspire card gives you is very helpful. I found that I am able to take that credit and prepay some of the activities if I'm not planning a stay at a Hilton, like within that time period. So it gives you $200 every 6 months, and you can just call up Hilton or send them an email and let them know that you want to charge $200 to your folio for your upcoming stay. And then they'll apply that credit. So when you go, if you're eat at the restaurant or you decide to go to the spa or whatever it may be, you have that $200 on your account that you can use at that time. And they give you $400 to use over the whole year. They give you a free night certificate. So I used that for a hotel that cost about $900 in Paris. So that alone took care of the $550 fee. So I essentially paid $550 for a hotel and everything else was like a bonus. Gives you diamond status, which isn't the best perk in the US, but it's great abroad. It saved me $1,000 on breakfast in the Maldives because, as I mentioned before, that place was super expensive. But the breakfast buffet was $100 per person per day. And that's roughly like, yeah, so it was $1,000. So I basically saved like $1,700 in real usable value from having this card. So not theoretical, but actually money that I didn't have to spend elsewhere. Another real life example, we recently pivoted and took a trip to San Antonio. So the storms in Hawaii were happening, and we were supposed to leave out to fly into Oahu on the day of the anticipated biggest day of the storm. And it did hit, and we saw and heard stories of the floodings. And when we got to Maui, we saw a little bit of the residual from what happened in Maui and heard stories of people who, had arrived the day of the storm and had to deal with finding new accommodations because they couldn't get to certain parts of the island. But because I had the free night certificate, I was able to pivot and, use that for booking a hotel in Coronado at the last minute during a very busy time in spring break in San Diego. We used our free night certificate and points. I paid $0 for the hotel, and that's where this game becomes powerful. Now, I did have to make some adjustments to our flights, which again came with the cost because we all know last minute flight bookings aren't cheap. So, 2 days before scrambling, trying to find new flights is not an easy process or a cheap process. But I was able to use some of the credits that I had with Southwest from, this card and from our Amex Platinum cards, which made pivoting a lot less painful and allowed us to be able to enjoy our trip without pause. And so here's the strategy part. Not every card is worth keeping. Okay. So I've closed cards, I've downgraded cards, I'm reevaluating constantly because the goal isn't to collect cards, right? The goal for many of us is to simply extract the value from that card and then move on when it no longer makes sense for you. So I think this plan works very well for a lot of high income earners, such as physicians. So let's get into why this works so well for physicians and healthcare professionals in particular. We've got high expenses, right? Many of us, you've got dues, you've got CME expenses. Many of us have businesses or business expenses that are required. And we have incomes that give us the ability to pay these balances in full. So you're in a position to earn points fast. And then you're in a position to redeem them for high value travel and still be able to contribute the cash that goes into, booking these trips. So before I wrap up, I did want to give my very important reality check disclaimer that I always give. Again, this is not a game you should play if you're carrying credit card debt, if you're not paying your balances in full, your finances aren't in order. I think this is a huge motivator to get your finances in order, and for sure. But if they're not, I think this can really stress your income. This can be a very stressful and not fun game. And then the interest that you're going to pay, upwards of 20% on a lot of these premium cards is going to wipe out any benefit that you're getting. And kind of, veering off topic, but in the same family of thought, it's something that comes up frequently from people who are thinking that maybe they want to get into the game. And maybe these are people who are really, financially savvy or just concerned about their credit card fees and credit scores. But just a quick plug about the credit score myth, because again, it's something that comes up frequently. Having multiple credit cards doesn't actually ruin your credit. It actually increases the available credit that you have. And as long as you're not, using all hundred thousands of dollars that the credit card companies have extended to you, it's actually going to help improve your credit score. It's going to affect your utilization ratio, which is a factor in your credit score. My credit score has gone up since starting this game significantly because I'm making my payments on time, showing the credit card companies that, I'm responsible and I'm using credit appropriately. I have a low utilization ratio and I have a large amount of total credit that's available to me. And that's what builds strong credit. And you do need strong credit to be able to apply and, to be eligible for many of these premium cards. So that's the one thing that I just wanted to mention. And my final thoughts, I stayed 23 nights in hotels last year for $0 out of pocket. But again, it wasn't free. It was strategic, it was intentional, and it was optimized. And I think that's the difference. And I don't want this to discourage you because you don't need $6,000 in annual fees and 5011 credit cards to make this work. You just need a strategy, the right cards, and a plan that fits your life. And if you can do that, this game can completely change how you travel and honestly, how you live. So if this episode helped you see things a little more clearly, please share it with someone who thinks travel and points is maybe too good to be true. Because the truth is, it is powerful, but only if you understand the full picture. And if you're serious about using points to unlock better travel and not just more travel, I do offer guided strategy and implementation sessions. I can help you build a personalized points plan based on how you're spending, on your goals, and how you actually want to travel. So you're not wasting time, you're not missing opportunities, or leaving points on the table. There are two ways that you can work with me. You can book a one time strategy session where you'll basically walk away with a customized plan, a written guide, and follow up support. Or if you want a higher level of guidance, my 90-day program is where we implement everything together and get you traveling at a completely different level like a pro. Now, if that sounds like what you need, check the link in the show notes or send me a message to get started. Thank you so much for listening. It's always an honor to be in your ear, to have you here with me, and I'll see you next time.